Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are today. And now that we've got Facebook working, apparently there was a global outage. We're back, and I hope you're joining us from that platform as well. So we have two special guests today, and like last week, we shared about a fun project, a great project that someone else was doing, and we seem to be on that theme of sharing some really great, innovative things that global workers at WorldVenture are doing. And so I look forward to unpacking the story and introducing you to Dr. Brian and Megan Meyers from Mozambique. So if you'll just say hi to everyone, we've got people joining from all over. So
hello, everyone.
Hi there.
So before we get into the questions, I just want to let everyone know that you are welcome to ask questions in our chat. If you're joining us from social media, there is a chat in most of it, and feel free to ask questions, leave comments. That actually encourages our guests and encourages me. So it's not interrupting. So feel free to do that all throughout. And we'll backtrack to your question if we seem to go on to another subject. So welcome. Let's dig deep into your personal story and let people get to know you a little bit better. So how did you both become a believer, and when did your faith become your own?
Let me start.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's wonderful to talk about the most precious moment or few moments in my life, right? And as is not uncommonly the case, that often happens in childhood. So for myself, I was 5 years old and had come home in some Sunday night. My family was one of those go to church 3 times a week minimum sorts of families. And I was about 5 or 6 and just had this very sacred moment where I wrapped myself in these long floor-length drapes, and I had the sense of the Holy Spirit saying, I knew myself that I was not good, and I think, or bad. I think that's the child's way of understanding the word sinner, and that there was something that was better and other and richer and kind of adult words for reaching out to a father, and that was a formative moment for me.
Mm-hmm. I also was raised in a Christian home, and so my early years in education, I actually attended a Christian school, and we learned the alphabet by learning different verses. So A was all have sinned, and B was be kind. And at the end of learning the entire alphabet, our teacher basically gave an altar call and said, hey, who would like to receive Jesus as their Lord and Savior? And I raised my hand. I wanted to have him in my heart and in my life. And I promptly rushed home that afternoon, and I told my younger sister, who was 3 at the time, that she needed to repent and say the sinner's prayer with me. So we got down and knelt and said the prayer that I had just said earlier in the day. So my sister and I share the same spiritual birthday.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I can't even remember what I did at 5 years old, so that's even more unique. So as a married couple, when did you realize your ministry service was overseas, and what was that process, and why Mozambique?
Well, it's interesting. It's a little bit of a longer story. Both of us, because we actually grew up as missionary kids. I grew up in Papua New Guinea. My parents were with Wycliffe, teaching at a missionary kids school. And my husband was born in Taiwan and grew up in China and Japan. And both of us individually felt the call to missions before we even met. For me, it was in college, really feeling the call towards international mission. working with the poor, working in a urban context. And Brian, it was a different experience than we actually met at a WorldVenture hospital in Côte d'Ivoire and Ferkesi-Dogu, so way out in the middle of nowhere. So it's interesting, even from the get-go, from our first encounter, we were on mission. And so initially, our call to mission, we knew as a couple that we wanted to live missionally. And that involved initially living in inner city Detroit and being involved in ministry to our literal neighbors, people who lived across the street or around the block. It's a challenging neighborhood. It's one of the poorest zip codes, at least in the state of Michigan. And so we noticed that our neighbor kids struggled to read. So we started a book club where I was involved in after school arts enrichment program and just tried to live missionally where we were. And maybe I'll pause there, let Brian kind of catch up on
That's fine.
his individual call. And then we'll move into kind of where we felt the call to Mozambique. Yeah. You know, when you're talking to older people, we've got a longer story, right?
That's okay. Like I said, we want to hear the stories. We want to really get to know you, really learn, where this foundation brought you to, and then we'll move into the present of that in that case. But yeah, please do.
Yeah. So, you can kind of skip over a decade in a few sentences. Huh? When I finished my degree at the University of Michigan, I went back to China, and while working in China, through a very challenging life situation of a friend of mine died in a plane crash there in China, and it reshaped my life in many ways. I had been looking at, because I speak Mandarin, 你好,好久不见, and and I thought that China was on the radar screen for my future. And when you speak Mandarin and you're 23 and you're looking at a business degree, it made a lot of sense to go towards an MBA. And my friend's death reconfigured or redirected me, and I got into looking into a different pathway, which that looking into meant going to an orphanage. So I started working at an orphanage once a week, Saturday afternoons, and I was working 5.5 days at a hotel, which was fine. I liked, making sure that people are happy and chocolates on their pillows, but I was looking for something a little more, a little richer. And Saturday afternoons, when you would walk into that, the effects of China's one-child policy with this is in the mid-90s of young baby girls and handicapped children and bleak, dank walls in a otherwise kind of smoggy city. Yeah, it just touched me, the human connection of what children needed. And I got involved in particular one young child and brought her out and helped. She was, 4 at the time, and ended up getting her into a permanent Christian setting. And that really, really shaped my idea of what was meaningful to me. So I pivoted and I came back to the States and did all my prereqs, and that led me into medicine with a sense of purpose. Really, I was on fire. You go to undergrad and like, okay, I'm just going to soldier through, but that was very different when I came back in my mid-20s. I knew what it meant to study. I knew where I was going, and marched through medical school. I'm a person. When I was coming back from China, I remember praying, Lord, where do you want me to go to church? And I'm not I didn't hear an audible voice, but I had this little kind of like one word in my head kind of thing, and I sensed it was the Holy Spirit saying the name of the church, which I really didn't know. And it's called Ward in Detroit. And that church ended up being an anchoring place for me while I went through medical school, and then ended up connecting me into inner city Detroit. So, that's the kind of pivot from my childhood, which was China, to my future, which was in medicine. But at the time I had no concept about Mozambique. I was mostly interested in the poor and the needy and health, and meeting people in their most basic and urgent needs. Yeah. So I don't know. There's so many chapters of things. Yeah.
That's often the challenge I get in these interviews. We've had people with 50 years on the field, and how do you get, a handful of questions that adequately shares the depth of the ministry of the things that all of you have done. So,
Yeah. So I think part of the question,
Yep.
and maybe this is wrong, but part of the question was, okay, so what led you eventually to Mozambique?
What was the process of why Mozambique? Yep.
Got it. Okay. So fast forward, we meet in Ivory Coast. We know that we want to be engaged in missions. We start as an early married couple just locally in our neighborhood. Ryan's parents were also teachers for missionary kids, and taught in many places around the world. Their last major tour of duty, we can say, was actually to start a school in Mozambique, in Maputo, the capital. And they taught the Schmitz kids and a number of other people that have come and gone through WorldVenture. So early on in our married life, we went to go visit mom and dad for Christmas holidays. And we thought, well, since we're going to be traveling to Mozambique, let's learn a little bit about this culture. Let's see if we can connect with local ministries. Let's see if we can learn a little Portuguese. And we did that. And a few days into our time there, my husband turned to me and he said, man, Portuguese is a lot easier than Mandarin. I can actually read this language. And so that began the kind of gentle nudging and whispering voice of the Lord, consider Mozambique, consider ministry here, what that might look like. And so we considered and we prayed, and we had 3 children in 15 months, our firstborn, and then followed by twins.
Oh, wow. I was wondering how that 3 months.
And so, right. So then it became, yes, Lord, if you want us to pursue ministry in Mozambique, we need a very specific place to land. We are in the season of small children, lots of diapers.
450 a month.
Right. So we need a solid place to land. So we did a second kind of a vision trip at this point back to Mozambique. The twins were about 5 months old. We left them with some dear friends who are still friends, surprisingly, and our oldest with another family. And we did about 2 weeks of going from Maputo, the capital in the very south, all the way up to Beira in the central region of Mozambique, and back down again, praying and asking the Lord, where, if we're going to be here, where. While we were in the capital, we Brian visited the Central Hospital and kind of toured around. I was with another missionary friend, and I will never forget, we came back to pick him up, and he came walking down the hallway with a grin on his face and gauze in his hand. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's cut himself. He's got stuck with a dirty needle, but he's happy. I don't know what's going on. And he comes closer and he opens up the gauze, and he's got a worm that a child vomited up during some kind of procedure. And he's thrilled. I'm thinking that's disgusting, but the Lord calls his own in his own kind of a way. So the very next day, we actually went to a Catholic medical school, which was affiliated with that hospital, and talked to the rector, the dean of the medical school. And he said, I'm not just interested in medical education, but I really need someone to come alongside and spiritually mentor my students. And we realized that this may be the place for us. We came back to Detroit. We connected with WorldVenture. They decided that we could be missionaries with WorldVenture. And we started fundraising. And within 6 months, we were on the field in Mozambique, in Baeta, central Mozambique.
Nice.
So I'm just going to kind of tie a story to a story, and I'm walking up with this gauze in my hand, and the thing about the worm is that if you recall back so this was 2008, but 10 years earlier, when I had been in China and I had been involved with the orphan girl, she had developed appendicitis because of these worms. It's a special type of worm, ascariasis. And so I had seen the worm in conjunction with the girl at the beginning of my call. And then 12 years later, as the Lord was confirming that call, it was through a worm of sorts. There were just, those kinds of pieces. My sheep know my voice. When you seek to the Lord and you're listening, it's not every day that he clearly directs, but it is from time to time. And when he does direct, then we need to act on that. So yeah.
I love that, the worm. That is great. That is definitely a message from the Lord.
Well,
I mean, he did it with Jonah, right?
Yep, with the whale. Yeah. Exactly. So go ahead. You're going to say something?
No, I guess one of the other things that I think is in the expose of the Lord calling and directing is that he often will start small, and if you're faithful in small things, then it begins to grow into other things. And before we went to the field, we were quite active in our church, and meaning not just attending services, but like engaged in our neighborhood and bringing kids to church, and in relationally inside of the church, sharing meals together, playing games. Like it was one of those almost magical, 3, 4, 5 years of time in inner city Detroit. And kind of supporting that or buttressing that, I got involved in real estate. I bought an old house and rehabbed that. That house had a tree growing out the back door, and when Megan moved in, the tree was gone, so she didn't have to deal with that.
Yay!
But so I bought one, and then I bought a duplex about a block away, and I had some friends that moved into that house, and then about 9 blocks away, I bought a triplex. Wow. And each of those were, you learn kind of rehab things, but then you learn management skills on how do you manage rental properties and how do you grow community among a lot of med students that were involved in that. And that's even oddly enough, that in the triplex, I think we had it for 12 years or so. and we rented it to a number of people, and probably, I'm going to say 10% of our support comes from people that rented from us in that triplex.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's snow that has kind of continued to unroll in as we've moved on, of like, oh, those little skills and relationships have continued to bear fruit and connect with what we do in Mozambique.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So what's the spiritual landscape of Mozambique?
The first thing that comes to mind is uneducated. And I think the people of God, from time immortal, from the beginning of God speaking to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob, it's that you must record and tell this story so that it's not lost. It is incumbent upon the church to carefully tell the story of how creation came and what creation is, and how that story unfolds. And so the Protestant church has been traditionally in missions communicating that story. And that story in Mozambique is woefully understood. So, yeah, in part because of, a lack of education. There's 50% illiteracy in Mozambique, and the church is just coming online.
Yeah. Mozambique has been kind of part of the global marketplace for many, many years. It's part of the Swahili kind of Muslim trading coast. So, in fact, Mozambique Island, the leader of that island, Mozambique, is the one that gave the country its name. So Islam has been around for decades, centuries. The Portuguese came with Vasco da Gama, and so they, of course, brought the Catholic Church. And so Mozambican history and colonial history comes into play here as well in terms of the spiritual landscape. Catholic Church's policy was such that Protestant missional efforts were eschewed, though people who were moving back and forth to Zimbabwe or down to South Africa for the mining were kind of exposed to some Protestant missional efforts. And some of the early kind of freedom fighters during kind of independence, we're talking in the 60s, and then mid 70s, were educated in Protestant-based schools. And they came back with some different ideas about what it means to be Mozambican. Mozambique gained independence from Portugal in 1975, so it's kind of a late bloomer on the stage of the kind of African history and independence. And then it was immersed in a 20-something year civil war. It was really a war of destabilization, in part sponsored by apartheid South Africa at the time and white-led Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And so that also impacted kind of missional efforts. A peace accord was signed in 92. And from that point on, so kind of the mid 90s is when more evangelical Protestant mission efforts were established. So it's a unique place, and the Mozambique, you can see there's more kind of Christian influence in the south, center is kind of almost a 50-50 mix between Christian and Muslim. And then in the north, it's predominantly Muslim. There are a number of unreached people groups in northern Mozambique. I think there are 7, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So another piece of the spiritual part, when David Livingstone and his wife went through Mozambique in the mid 1800s, he was essentially kicked out because he was an abolitionist. And Mozambique is a quiet but significant participator in the Zanzibar, in the Sultan of Zanzibar and his slave trade. And Mozambique Island for many years was the kind of gateway for that. The Portuguese were not did not share the same hesitation as the Brits, for example, to intermingle with the Mozambicans. So there's a large mulatto, especially on the coastal region, population in Mozambique that stems from hundreds of years of sailors and their business. And there's a persistent kind of class issue connected with that. Of those were once you got beyond 4th grade, you could become what's called an assimilated one, or assimilado. And if you became an assimilated one, then you had it's essentially that they got a little bit more education, and when independence came, it was those assimilated ones that had that the power was transferred to relatively quickly, but the level of what they knew was inadequate for the infrastructure that they took over. So when the Civil War finished in 1992, Mozambique was the poorest country in the world, with more landmines than any other place on earth. And if you can't, if there are mines, then you can't plant. If you can't plant, then you can't eat. And if you can't eat, then there's significant starvation issues. So that demining process by the United Nations took about 10 years, or 10 to 15 years. But it's since resolved, and many of the larger relief agencies have stepped out of Mozambique, and in its vacuum has left a development problem, because relief only does what relief does, which is create, in some ways, if you do prolonged relief efforts, it creates a dependence. It helps this dependence question in a bad way. And so that's Mozambican leadership is grappling with that vacuum for skills and education and just competencies. Whatever field you're in, whether you're in medicine, which is my area, or whether you're in teaching, or whether you're in accounting, or just government, or whatever that there, and there's a vacuum in there.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot I didn't know about that. I knew about the slave trade part, and I just finished reading a book on Livingstone, so I knew about his abolition. That was an interesting book, but that's fascinating. So going back just a tad bit,
Sure.
we talk about, we get a lot of questions from people, usually younger people, who feel the call to missions, but the thing that stops them is partner development, or what we call raising a financial team or fundraising. So it can be intimidating, admittedly, but what did God teach you through your own partner development once you were with WorldVenture?
One thing I want to say is I really love the phrase partner development. We are part of a team. We have we've lived basically on the coast of Mozambique for almost 20 years. It's been a while. And regularly we'll see fishermen. One of the things that they will do is they will throw out large nets. And the fishermen are out in the water helping to kind of direct the nets in a certain way. And then you'll have grannies and kids and other people who are waiting for the catch of the day. And they actually help to drag those huge nets onto the shore. And that's the way that we see kind of our engagement with Mozambique. We might be out there in the water, literally kind of helping to guide things, but there are people on the shore, people here in the US and other places that are helping to haul in the catch. And so it is a team effort. We have been in the US for this academic year, and we have connected with a number of our partners. Some of them have been partners with my family, Brian's family, when we were growing up, and now as we're adults and have kids of our own. And we have been able to witness their connection with us and with the ministry over decades. And it is such a joy to not only minister in Mozambique, but also minister back here and just connect with people who love the Lord and love the world that He's created. So it's partner development. We are a team, and we minister to those that are part of the team in Mozambique.
Yeah, I think at the heart of this is that this is not world adventure.
Yep.
This is not an international. Sorry.
No, I said, yep, I
Are you
agree.
there?
Yeah, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Just keep talking.
Okay.
It's cutting out.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it's working or not, but one of the thoughts on this is that this is a not an adventure for us, but truly a what's the word that Frodo, that Gandalf uses? It's a
Quest.
It's a quest.
Quest.
It's
yes, quest.
something
yes,
that
yes, yes.
it's something that is put on you. It's put on Megan and I by a shepherd who sees the picture and says, now it's time for you to go. And it just so happens that the configuration, the world that we live in America and Protestantism and so forth, that the way that we go includes developing and bringing partners along with us. Some of them are friends, some of them are churches, some of them are, kind of loosely family, these kinds of relationships, and to tap in to that quest of the what exactly this is, what God has called me to, not just something that I'm interested in or a side hobby, but that I am focused on where the shepherd of not just my soul, but of the souls that are with us and the souls that He wants us to encounter and meet, that is a divine guideline. And so we are walk in that assurance. And when I pick up the phone, I set aside the there are lots of sales principles that come into play with this, of grit and determination and kind of marketing or whatever, but at the heart of it, that this is something divine, and the Lord Himself, it's the Holy Spirit who is making a way for us to get there, and then we join in that way.
That's right.
I have my reservations about the way that all goes shaped. It's just the way it is in WorldVenture, and it these things have each has its tendency. So you have to know that the Lord has called you to this, right? As opposed to, I'm just calling me to be a tent maker, or He's calling me to be something else. But for us, this was one of those decisions we knew clearly that the Lord was leading us to WorldVenture.
Yeah.
That's great. And how long have you been with WorldVenture, and what do you both do?
When did we start? Oh, goodness. I think we were appointed with WorldVenture in 2008.
May of 2008.
There we go. Yeah.
We got
were
on the field in February 2009.
Yes.
So if you count our first midterm thing and then shift into long term, which was a thing in itself, that that puts us at 17 years right now.
Mm-hmm.
Whew. Awesome. Yep. And what do you guys both do?
So I'm an ethnomusicologist by training, and I'll go ahead and explain what that is.
Thank you.
Very few people know what is that. So ethno meaning kind of culture or ethnos, and then musicology, the study of music. So it's the study of music cultures, and what that has looked like in global engagement has been everything from teaching contextualized worship arts courses at Bible schools, partnering with local churches to help establish worship teams, mentoring musicians and other local artists, and even helping to, here's another fancy term for you, indigenous hymnody, helping to create indigenous hymnody. What that means is essentially worship music that is both culturally relevant but biblically faithful. So it is helping I kind of call myself like a musical midwife. Like I help people birth the songs that are within.
And there's an article about that, about you.
Oh, yes.
It's located on the ministry profile, so you can just go to the link in the chat or scan the QR, or not scan the QR code because that goes to Rapha, but you can go to the link in the chat and we'll put it later on the blog, but you can see it on their ministry profile. But go ahead.
Yeah, so that's me.
Awesome. And Brian?
Yeah. Well, I'm a husband.
Yes, you are. And a highly qualified one at that. Yes.
Well, I'm what you have. You get what you get.
That's true. I do.
And you don't throw a fit.
No. Most days.
I'm a dad, and those are both very precious.
That's true.
Precious to me. And as I get older, I'm now in my mid-50s, then things, it's funny, like my dad's in his 80s and he'll weep at the drop of a hat, and I am like
getting there.
I'm getting there, especially as my little girls are no longer little girls, and the treasure that you that I will miss. I miss them already, but so I professionally, I am trained as an emergency room physician. I trained at Henry Ford Hospital, also known as the Knife and Gun Club of Detroit. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great institution, and delighted to be connected with that. I worked here in Detroit for a few years, and then we went to Mozambique. And the specific, my interest in missions, having kind of a longer, view of missions and medical missions, is that the shift. There's been a shift in strategy from treat to train, and so the objective here is to make disciples, and not just in terms of people that follow Jesus on Sundays, but also those who have missional callings in their professional lives. So when we went to Mozambique, there was no mission hospital. There still is no mission hospital in Mozambique, and we were interested in training, so we joined up with a medical school there that had its practical in the national healthcare system. So I worked in the national healthcare system in the what we call undergrad, but the medical school level, and then up in the residency level for 15 years, where I have seen the guts and the glory of, or other phrases, the difficulties and challenges that Mozambique faces in its medical world. It's also been a pleasure to train more than 200 Mozambican physicians. And that many of those have grown up and moved into positions of leadership. And it's been wonderful to see them grow professionally and some of them to grow spiritually. And I think, and then, then the last 2 years we were in Kenya at Kijabi Hospital for a couple years where I worked in the hospital there.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about Betty United? There's one more project that we did that has nothing to do with the medicine or ethnomusicology.
Yeah, please do, because as
it has a lot to do with our primary ministry, which is our kids.
Yeah.
About 7 years ago, we were kind of doing a combination of homeschooling and sending our kids to a private Portuguese school for cultural acquisition and language learning. And we got to a point where we're kind of on the edge of competency. We recognized that there were other friends who and church members who were looking for a robust, quality Christian education. And so we kind of banded together and started Beta United Christian Academy. In 2019, we had 30-something students and a few teachers. And that has really blossomed. Now it's over 320 students. It's a bilingual school, so we are teaching both in English and in Portuguese. We have over 40 teachers and close to 200 families that are somehow connected with it, either being staff or sending their kids as students. So it's been an incredible blessing and privilege and challenge to also be involved in that, being so we are not school administrators, and that's not necessarily what we were trained to do professionally. But sometimes in life, and especially when you're involved in a global community, you just have to do whatever the next thing is.
Yep.
And it grew out of a personal need to educate our girls, and has blossomed into something much more than that.
Well, as Lynn just said in a comment on Facebook, Nikki, it's easier to ask what the Meyers don't do. They are high impact global workers. And she also wrote, excuse me, we love the Meyers so much and are grateful for the decades to serve with them.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. Love you.
We're going to skip ahead a little bit to segue to the talk about building stuff. You seem to have that spiritual gifting of just building stuff for the school. You're teaching. You're doing so much. I mean, first, my question is, how do you rest? Where do you find free time? But let's get into this new project, which sounds pretty amazing. And you can, and everyone else who's watching online, you scan the QR code in the corner, it'll bring you right to this new project called Rapha. Or there's a link in the chat. And for those of you watching on the website, it will be on the blog later. And you can click all the links you'd like to click. But tell us about Rapha.
Okay. Based on my hour, but a lot of, because it's a medical venture, my time in Mozambique, where the strategy was to be inside of the national healthcare system. And when we went to Kenya for those 2 years, the first 2 weeks, I came home to Megan and I said, look what they can do on a shoestring budget. They can do so many things that the healthcare system in Mozambique struggles to accomplish with all of the various obstacles that are there. And we began to pray and ask, and a SIM missionary came, and we went on a trip asking the Lord, kind of spying out the land, asking the Lord, is this something that you would like us to do? So I'm a kind of like, let's bring people together stuff to do something that is worth doing person. And so we talked with a lot of mission agencies that are working in northern Mozambique, from SIM to AIM to Mission Aviation Fellowship to YWAM to Iris Global Ministries. Of course, we talked with Roger and Lynn while they were there, and the Germans, and it was just nonstop. Anybody that would listen, tell me if you're YWAM, if you can see a place for a large flagship surgical training mission hospital. Then we connected also with the fledgling but growing Christian medical community in Mozambique. And that led us to the government office in Nampula, where I met with the governor. And the next day I was in Maputo, sent to the Ministry of Health. And that has unfolded into a memorandum of understanding to do two brand new things in Mozambique that have not been done since independence. Number one is to open up a surgical training mission hospital. And number two is that the residency training will come. There will be a missional official surgical residency training program, much like other mission hospitals in other countries have. So they exist in Malawi, they exist in Kenya and Tanzania and Gabon, and many sub-Saharan African countries have training programs, residency training programs. So we are pivoting our ministries. We will be leaving Beta, where we have lovely, wonderful roots, and moving up closer to the island up there, but we'll be based in Nampula, which is the crossroads of northern Mozambique. If you know a map at all, it's just kind of go way up north in that block, and we're about in the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and you're leaving behind a very successful school and ministry that you guys started. And as you said, 320 students in the school itself. And now this sounds pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to know, what brought that to mind? I mean, what was the process that inspired you to even think about doing this? I mean, there had to have been a catalyst or something.
Sure. Well, I'll start, and then if you want to chime in. When we moved to Kenya for a few years to support our 3 older girls in their last few years at Rift Valley Academy. And so because we made that move, we did a fair amount of passing the baton to people at the school, people at the other ministries that we were involved in. And while we were in Kenya, we would come to visit every 3 months or so, and certainly we're in a regular communication via WhatsApp with our colleagues in Mozambique. But what we sensed was actually we've passed the baton, and people are taking the baton and they're running and they're moving forward. To return back to Mozambique, to return back to Beira and to pick up right where we left off doesn't make any sense. In fact, it's kind of retrograde. From the beginning, we've really taken to heart the principle from 2 Timothy 2:2 to entrust to faithful people who can in turn teach others. And so we realized that while Mozambique is definitely still on our hearts and we still feel called to Mozambique, there may be an opening for something different. And so that was the beginning of the kind of what's next question for us. And there are a number of factors in terms of why Nampula, why the north. It is definitely the poorest area in the country. It has the greatest health burden. There's one surgeon for 2.5 million people in northern Mozambique. It's just staggering. And then lastly, it's predominantly Muslim, and there are the greatest number of unreached people groups in that area. So most mission efforts are at this point reaching towards the north, focused on the north. And that's, I think, kind of the genesis of considering, well, if it's Mozambique, where should it be? It should be in the north. And then looking at what are the skills that Brian and I already have and the experiences, and how can we best use those or be used by the Lord for his work.
So I like stories because I think a story captures things. And we have a security guard at the school. His name is Tomasz, and Tomasz was off duty and riding a bicycle, and he got hit by a car.
Yeah.
And there are 2 bones in his lower leg, and he broke both of those bones, and they were off center like this. And because he's a guard at the school, and I got the X-ray pretty quickly, and I was like, well, he needs surgery. He went to the central hospital where the orthopedic doc on contract, he's probably Cuban, I don't know for sure, could have been North Korean, said, no, you don't need to get surgery, we'll put you in a cast. So Tomasz walked around in a cast, off work, no income for 4 months, hoping this would heal. And then he went back at the end of 4 months, and the guy said, well, if you go to my private clinic, I'll fix this for you for $3,500. Well, in Mozambican terms, that's 4 to 5 years of salary for and impossible. So here's a young man who's lost his dignity, his ability to work and support his family because of incapacity on the system to fix his problem. We made arrangements to send him to Malawi. So he went to Malawi and got this taken care of. And it's interesting to think that you are sending somebody to Malawi for healthcare. But it really is a step up in Malawi. Malawi has a number of mission hospitals. They have orthopedic hospitals. And that case, and if you march that case out over and over and over and over again, some of which I can resolve, many of which are not resolvable, and there's no system for access for care for these younger, for poorer Mozambicans. If you're rich, you can go to South Africa, you can fly to India, you can go other places, but and so there's not been impetus to build infrastructure for poorer people there. And this Tomasz's story and the other stories have led to a conviction in my heart that we as a mission community need to extend the hands of Jesus into this mire and mucky situation. And we can, it's fully possible. And there's, with our experience with the open door in the United States, the resources, and the open door from the government, there's a confluence and an opportunity for us as a team and WorldVenture to step through and transform, supporting to establish the Church of Jesus in northern Mozambique. So what Roger was doing, what other people across the region are doing, will be supported and reinforced and connected with this system. The idea is not just to have a flagship training hospital, but to connect that into community health development. So if you're out in the village, for example, we can help train a community health worker. So you have a community health worker and you have a pastor, for example, for holistic health, for the whole person health. And you start knocking on doors saying, hey, I'm going to check your blood pressure, or let's check you for diabetes or whatever. And then as you develop this regional triaging for health, and you have a reference point to send the more complicated cases, and then a support system to say this is actually how government legally provisioned healthcare system that will support what the church is trying to do, and telling the story of Jesus that much better, so that Tomasz, that surgeon, the Tomaszes of northern Mozambique will know not just that their body is made whole, but that their soul can be restored.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. And so for this project, how much are you trying to raise?
Yeah, so thanks. That's the question. Nice lead. So we have, as you can imagine, it's a very complicated thing. We are developing an independent 501c3 that will be the umbrella organization here in the United States, and a Mozambican association that will own the hospital, and these will be partnered together. And to get this flagship hospital off the ground, we need about $5 million in the next couple, well, we'll say 3 to 5 years, and to build the structure. But we don't want to start with there's the other side. There's capital and encounters, but there's operational expenses. So our operational expenses are the thing that kills these ventures. So what we really need are monthly partners to come alongside to keep the lights on, pay the nurses, pay the tech, and the young doctors that we've already recruited into the system. So we'll start small. We're going to start at an outpatient clinic in Nampula. We've partnered with another person mission there, and we'll do that for 2 to 3 years on that site while we buy the land and then build the other facility. One of the other pieces in development is that those surgical training hospitals, we have a Mozambican who was with Young Life. So she was a Young Life leader in Mozambique for many years, and now she is in her first year of surgical training in Malawi, and she will graduate in 5 years. And our hope is that by the time we get to 5 years, that we will be starting our surgical services that will eventually grow into a surgical training service. Yeah.
So you've heard that online. If you feel led, you can make a monthly donation of 25, 50, 100 a month, or even larger if you feel led. We even accept one-time gifts, and to help bring this project to fruition. You can click on the link in the chat under Rapha, or you can scan the QR code if you're watching on the website. And you can make a donation right now if you wanted to. But even if you're only able to give like 10 or 15 or 20 a month, that's something. And that is partnering, as we discussed in an earlier question, that is partnering with what God is doing in Mozambique. We are getting near we are at the top of the hour. So let's, how can people be praying for Rapha and for yourselves?
Well, personally, we'll be leaving to return to Mozambique end of August, so in a few short months, and we'll be leaving our 3 older daughters here in the U.S. to continue their university education. So that's not easy for a mom and for a family. So prayers for that, and just the transition. It's messy. They're never easy. So just personal prayers for stamina, for peace, and for joy in the moments as they come.
So I'm going to, it's a very specific request.
Sure.
That the Lord would help us evaluate who are faithful men or women for this project. As it says in 2 Timothy 2, train faithful men who in turn will teach others. There are lots of people who are going to be interested in this, and I don't want just anybody. I want those who are called and connected, people of character, and have proven fidelity to the Lord, especially at the beginning, so that when you, as you say, hire hard and manage easy, right? And we want to work with a small group of people and do it well so that we can build nicely. So that's the prayer, is faithful, that we will hire and connect with faithful people.
Amen to that. So you've heard the prayer requests, and I might add prayer for full funding as well to that.
Yeah.
But you've heard the prayer requests online. We will post while we post the snippets of these interviews online, we'll be sure to put just the prayer requests on our platform so that you can listen to it again during your time of prayer in the mornings. Brian and Megan, I want to thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing about this project. I'm praying for you. I'm sure Lynn is praying for you out there because I know she's still watching. Many of us are praying for this to be something that God brings together, just like He brought together all your other things that you've had done, the school, the medical stuff. I mean, and how you got started. God has definitely been using you your whole lives, and I can see it in your stories. So thank you for sharing that. Everyone else, we'll have other live streams. So if you would like to check WorldVenture. Oh, looks like I got kicked out by my own system. That's so anyway, as I was saying,
You're done.
it's my fault, the techie's fault. So as I was saying, we will have more events. So do check worldventure.com/events for further. Brian and Megan, please do stay on. And the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.